welcome back. Welcome back to the Extraordinary Drummer Show. I'm your host, Cheron Moore. Will you help me welcome my guest today? We know him from the group Slave, Steve Arrington. Hey, Steve.
Yo, Cheron, what it is, homie?
Hey,
Good to be with you today.
I'm well, thank you. How are you, man?
Doing well, man. Just trying to stay cool, dealing with the state of the country right now, but I'm staying smooth with it.
Let me take you all the way back, Steve.
Okay.
Tell me, how old were you when you first started playing drums? How did you become playing drums, and when did you get your first drum kit?
I got my first drum kit, a Slingerland Blue Metal Flake set my grandparents bought me. Had the Speed King foot pedal. And prior to that, though, the reason they really took an interest in that they should get me a drum set, I used to play on pots and pans and books of different sizes to get different tones. I would sit them on the couch. I would then get on the floor, and then I would play, had some drumsticks, and I would play the books and the pots and pans. And I did it so much, my parents started talking to my grandparents, like, this boy, he's playing these pots and pans and books every day. So my grandparents decided just to bless me and took me down to the local music store and bought me a set of Slingerlands. And that's how it all started. And I was 8 years old.
Moving forward, as you got out and started playing the drums, tell me about these groups, Young Mystics and Black Soul Band.
The Young Mystics was a local band that had some members that ended up being in the group Slave. The great Mark Adams, rest in peace, the bassist for Slave. He was the bass player in the Young Mystics. Floyd Miller, who was one of the vocalists, trombone player and percussionist as well with Slave. He was in that group. And Tom Lockett was a horn player who played with Slave as well. All those guys were original members of Slave. They were also in that group. And we're in the 9th grade, right? We're talking about 75. I was older than them. I was a senior. They were freshmen. So we're talking about 75, around in that time. And I knew then, like the great Mark Adams, when I told my older brother, Victor, who had the bands, earlier in those years, I said, man, this kid on bass is crazy, man. This dude is bad. So I played with the Young Mystics for a while prior to me leaving to go out to the West Coast. Now, the other band you mentioned, can you tell me that one again?
That was called Black Soul Band? Black Soul?
Black Satin Soul or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. That was where Stevie Washington and Mark Hicks came together. Stevie Washington, the original leader of Slave, came down from New Jersey, because Slave is a combination of Dayton and East Orange, New Jersey. So Stevie Washington comes down to live with his uncle, who was the trumpet player for the Ohio Players Pee Wee. And he wanted to go to school in Dayton because he was a roadie with the Players. So he ended up coming to school in Dayton. And he and Drac met, and they played with this group, Black Satin. So I think that was the name of the band. And they were much older than them. They said, man, we need to find some cats our own age and start a group. And that group was Slave. And that happened in around 76, around that time. And then a year later, they had Slide, 1977.
Tell me about the band, the Murphys Band. Was that roughly around the same time, or was that after?
Mm-hmm. I graduated in 75, and I wanted to try and make it. Now, what was very interesting, the group Lakeside, there was the Ohio Players who were the elder statesmen. They were the cats who really brought it and made us all feel that we could possibly do something on a national and international level. But they were a little older. The guys who were older than us that we looked up to, I'm talking about Cats from Slave and Phaso, we looked up to Lakeside. They were more of our age group, just a little older, and they decided to make it. They moved to LA to make it. And we were all like, well, if Lakeside moved to LA, we got to go out west too, because they were the template for us, right? But what I did, instead of going to LA, I went to the Bay Area. And this is early 77, at the end of 76. Graduated from high school, kind of got myself together and went out to the West Coast. Now, what was interesting about that, prior to me leaving, I had did this audition for this lounge band. And I had gotten an audition, but the drummer decided not to leave. So that was basically my decision. Okay, well, that didn't really work out. I'm going to go to the West Coast. Now, after I got out there about a month and a half, trying to find my way, get it cracking, they called and said the drummer eventually did leave. And so I came back to Ohio, joined this lounge band called the Murphys.
Okay, so left the Murphys and went back to the West Coast, San Francisco.
Yes, sir.
And is that when you started working with the Escovedo family?
Yes, I sure did. That's late 77.
Did you go back to Slave after that?
What I did, I got a call from Slave. This is late 77. In the 78, I heard the song Slide, but I didn't know who it was. Slide, doom, 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 slide. I'm like, yo, man, this is dope. So I go to the record store and I pick up the album and flip it over, and it's some of the dudes that I had been playing with in the group, the Young Mystics, right? So they're on tour. They call me up on the West Coast and say they're going to do a drum chair change. Would I be interested in playing with the band? I said, yeah, because I was finishing my tenure with the Escovedos, because they were going back to their different groups, right? And so what I did is I moved back to Dayton after playing with the Escovedos, and this is 78 now. And they were on their second album, the Hardness of the World album, and I went directly on tour with them, first starting on percussion because the drummer, Tim Dozier, still had 2 months left before he was to leave. So I first started on percussion, and then I started playing, I had the drum chair after that, and we first went into the studio. My first studio thing with Slave was the concept album with the song Stellar Funk. So that's kind of how 70, from high school, 75, into 78, into deep into 78, that's kind of how my life went.
When you got back with Slave, how did the songs come about, the hits? Weak at the Knees. I want to talk about that drum beat. I think it was Way Out. Which one came first, Weak at the Knees or Way Out?
Well, both of those songs were on my solo records, on the Steve Arrington Hall of Fame records.
Okay.
My first song with Slave was off the concept album where I played the drums on Stellar Funk. Okay. Now, the next album, which was Just a Touch of Love album, which had the hit Just a Touch of Love, I played the drums on the whole album. And I also started really contributing from the writing point of view and also from the vocals, from the lead vocal point of view. And that happened in 79. Late 70, 78 is when I did Stellar Funk and did backgrounds on some of the other songs and played percussion. But 79 was when I really started to emerge as the drummer and also part of the songwriting and singing with Slave, and we sort of moved on from there. And as the sound started to develop and change and grow, that happened in 79 with the Just a Touch of Love album.
Moving forward, before I get to, now that I have an understanding of Weak at the Knees, which was so funky, and Way Out, which, you know, I've got 2 hours on that. Maybe 3. What made you go solo? Why'd you go solo?
Well, the thing about Slave, if you know the history of the band, after the first album, there was always personnel change. And it never did stop. Every album there was personnel change, but the changes made the band better. We grew through those changes. The thing though was there was issues with the business side of things. Because remember when Slave first started, Slide, they were 16, most of them were 16 years old. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but they weren't taken care of properly, in my estimation, in terms of how to get 16-year-olds everything that, the protection that they would need contractually and all that kind of stuff.
Speaking of your solo career, let's talk drumming a little bit.
Okay.
One of my favorite songs, the most funkiest songs is Weak at the Knees. I mean, that title literally fits. But let's talk about this song, Way Out. How did you come up with that drum beat? And what is that drum beat?
Well, I had done a session in New York with Jimmy Douglas, who was also the producer and also the engineer for the Slave records. And he was doing a thing with Odyssey. So he called me in to do a drum session with them. And as I was waiting, you know, in the drum booth, familiarizing myself with the kit and, you know, kind of working on what I was going to play, I started just grooving. And I came up with this beat. Right? And I'm like, yo, man, wait a minute. Yo, Jimmy, record me playing this beat. Just record this for me so I don't want to forget it. Because the session hadn't started yet, right? So now I was going to end up to play something that totally not related to that beat I had just made up, right? So he recorded it and then gave it to me at the end of the session. I went back to the hotel. And at this time, I had Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame. So when I went back to the hotel, we went to rehearsal. I was like, check this beat out, man. Boom, God, do, right? And they was like, yo, that's crazy, man. And so what I did, I started doing vocal parts for the guitar parts, the keyboard, different things like that, as you hear in the intro. Right? So what I did is I took those vocal parts and then I distributed them, the parts to the band around that beat. And that's how you come with Way Out.
Now, I got to ask these questions because guys are going to get on me. Are the tom-toms or the hi-hat or any parts of that beat, is that flown in later or is that all one piece?
That's one piece. That's one piece. Yeah, that's one piece. I've been asked that before, and you know they thought, well, did you overdub the hi-hat? I'm like, nah, nope, that's one piece. You know, there's times when something magical happens, you know, and those times are just precious, man.
What do you think of today's drummers?
Well, it's always about context for me. Like gospel drummers, gospel chops. In the realm of gospel music, the music is written and the music is understood how and written in a way that the drummer is able to truly move in and out of those sections with a lot of notes. In that context, I love it. But if you listen to jazz, you'll hear so much of what that was. If you listen to the great Tony Williams, you will hear all that, but it's in a jazz package. So a lot of notes works if it's in a package that asks for it, that needs that kind of movement out of the drums. And there's other styles where being busy is just being busy. So I would say I dig it all, but context is very important. And then you're playing in a context where it's more pocket oriented, and your moves that you make are to take us in and out of transitions or to color something up real nice, but not to be dominant, that the rhythm section becomes dominant, but the drummer makes moves and gets in and out, and knows how to make moves to bring certain energy, but doesn't come to dominate the music. So I think drummers just should think about context and learn how to do it all as much as possible.
What happened? I guess it may be a testimony, but what happened that caused you to become a minister? How was that changed? How did that change come about?
Well, I grew up in a family with ministers. My great uncle, and this is very cool. I was a little guy. He used to call me Music. Not music. He called me Music. He wouldn't even call me Stevie. He called me Music. And what was so interesting about that, I was like really little, and I would ask him, like, why is he calling me that? Why? He sees something in you. He sees something in you. Long story short, I loved my great uncle Charles. So in the 90s, I started feeling a draw of my spirituality. It was always there. It was always in the lyrics, but it had to be more pronounced and more pronounced and more pronounced. And my desire to connect in a deeper way with God meant that I had to spend more time. And that time meant it's time for me to step back from music for a while and really make that commitment to get in a deeper relationship with God.
On that Stone Throw Records, your new solo album, Down to the Lowest Terms, 2020. Do I have the title right?
Yes, Down to the Lowest Terms. Yes, sir. The Soul Sessions.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, the title is a math, down to the lowest terms, math algebra, right? When I was in the 8th grade. For some reason, that title really hit me. Now, I took it into even a social mode. People would go, bottom line, blase, blase, scoop, that's the bottom line. And I would be like, well, down to the lowest terms of this thing, boom, right? Or at the end of the day, boom, down to the lowest terms. When you break it all down, boom, it's about that blues. It's about that basic music that we came up with, that gospel, that blues. When you break it all down, rock springs from it, funk springs from it, jazz springs from it. All of it springs to the lowest common denominator of all of that is the blues, right? So I thought one day I'm going to have an album called Down to the Lowest Term. But I didn't take that title and use it to be hit. I used it when I felt what I did lived up to the name. And that's how you have Down to the Lowest Terms, the Soul Sessions.
What did it feel like that day when you got the call that you were nominated for a NAACP award?
That was incredible. because Dancing in the Key of Life, which it was for that song. Because again, I had started to evolve and change my music style. Feel So Real, Dancing in the Key of Life. They really broke big. Those are the biggest songs I've had internationally. They both did well here too. On the Dancing in the Key of Life really rocked as a dance song. Feel So Real was also me paying my debt and respect to the Escovedos with that Latin feel to it, that Latin flavor to it. Up-tempo type of thing. To know that the NAACP listened to that music and said, yo, man, we want you to be nominated as Male Artist of the Year. Now on that was Jeffrey Osborne. Also on that was Luther and myself. And I think one more, I can't think of it right now. Luther won. But I felt so good that Dancing in the Key of Life had gotten people's attention. People heard it. People appreciated it and respected it. So yeah, man, when I heard that, I was just like, oh, wow.
Let me ask you this one. We got a thing on the show we call Word of Advice.
Okay.
Where we ask the drummers, where we ask the guests if they would leave a word of advice for the upcoming drummers, and even the guys that are already at the next level, but that are trying to get traction in this business, in this game. If you leave them a word of advice, please.
Never be afraid to continue to evolve and change and grow. Yeah, you enjoy your strengths. Work on your weaknesses. Be honest with yourself. Times change, and continue to evolve, and then take in what it is you need to take in while maintaining yourself, your style, what you got, and let that ride with you while you add more to your game. Have your business together. Be good peoples, man, because this is a relation-oriented business. Relationships are very important. Man, good peoples goes a long way. Like I said, continue to allow yourself to grow. And sometimes growing is tough because you're not working so much on your strengths. You're working on some weaknesses, or you're just adding something fresh to what you're doing. Long story short, it's what's beautiful about what we do, because you can be a musician, artist all your life. It's not like, well, you're past your prime in a sports world. You're like, okay, he can't jump like he used to anymore. Or he can't throw the fastball. You're past your prime and that sort of thing. Music is different. Music can go on until, like I said, Buddy Guy, you're in your 80s. The great George Clinton still out there doing the thing, right? I'm 64 and I'm having as much fun as I've ever had, and I hope I ain't having as much fun as I'm about to have, because I love what I do and I enjoy working on getting better at it, even at my age, when people say, well, hey, you've done this, and yeah, but there's so much more to do. And then work on getting better as a person, because that reflects into the music as well. So that would be, don't run from change. Don't run from working at it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. In closing, let me ask you this one. What would you want your legacy to be? What do you want your legacy to be said and played out?
He was honest about this music. His music sounds honest. He really did love it. So it came through. That's it.
I tell you, if we had to pay for some of this advice and words of wisdom you've given us, attorney fees would look mild according to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, when I learned I had the opportunity or the chance of having you on the show, I tell you, you're the only drummer I've ever been nervous to interview. Only one. I've had my moments, but this one you saw a few times, I was like, because I know your body of work, man, and now I know more of the person. So I say thank you so much for coming on the Extraordinary Drummer Show.
Thank you, man. I had a great time, man. Really did, man. Thank you for having me, man. Big ups.
Yes, sir. Will you help me wave goodbye to all the fans?
Big ups. Love you guys out there. Stay safe. Let's get on the other side of this pandemic and keep getting funky with it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Cheron.
Ready for it? I got a strong hankering for some bass. I ain't playing with y'all tonight. Everybody in this place, are you ready?